Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to the live stream. It is time for Get Hired, episode 13. This is the 13th stream in this series I've done. So, lucky 13. And for that, I'm wearing a different shirt to celebrate this wonderful occasion. And to celebrate the contrast between blue and mustard yellow that we have down there at the bottom of the screen. I can't point to it. It's hard orientating there, right there. That's some beautiful color coordination. So welcome. There are 17 people here. You guys are awesome. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to be talking about how to pass job interviews, how to do resumes, and how to go about getting hired. And there's a lot more to the process than passing an interview or writing a resume. It's about where to look for jobs. Okay, we're going to talk about those. Okay, but this is a Q&A session, so feel free to ask questions. Like every other live stream on the planet, there is a chat box right next to the video, so you can type in your questions if you're a subscriber, and I will do my best to answer some questions. So here we go. We start with Gerson. Gerson, if I'm saying that right. Gerson says, "Hey, pal. Old buddy, old pal. Good morning. Great channel and advices. God bless your hard work." Well, thank you very much. That's a great start. I wanted to, actually, while we're waiting for the first questions to come in, I wanted to expand on something from a video I did a couple of days ago. The latest video I have is this video with like me in a yellow looking suit jacket and a yellow background, talking about salary and salary expectations. And wasn't the best edit of a video I've ever done, but the concept was this, okay? There's a lot of comments that I get on a lot of videos, especially with regard to the salary videos, where I'm talking about how to answer questions like, what are your salary expectations? Or what's your current salary? Or, things like this. And a lot of comments that I've received, they have something in common. They have people saying words to the effect of, if they don't want to pay me what I'm asking for, then it's not worth my time. And I don't think it was really communicated very well in the video. But what I was trying to say was that, unfortunately, even though it's perfectly reasonable to think that way and to take that position, totally reasonable. The problem is that if you express that in any part of the process to the interviewer, okay, to the recruiter or the hiring manager, if you sort of give off that vibe, okay, that's an immediate turnoff for the other party, okay? A lot of people don't realize this. And, you might think that, oh, okay, this person wants to be paid what they're worth, and that's a good thing. That shows they're worth a lot. So if they know their worth and they want to be paid their worth because presumably they're in demand, surely it's a good thing to communicate that, right? That has a certain logic to it. It makes perfect sense. The only problem is that if you've ever been on the other side of the table, okay, if you've ever tried to hire someone, and the example I've used in the past is if you just want to hire a friend or someone to help you move your stuff to a new place or something, you just need if they give off that vibe, you know what I'm talking about. It's a total turnoff, okay? It may be true, but it's a turnoff to express that, to send that signal in any way. It's very similar to another sort of popular thing, which is in a job interview, a lot of people have commented, and once again, they're correct, where they say, remember, you're interviewing the company as much as the company is interviewing you, okay? Now, that's absolutely true, okay? We all know this. You're not a slave. You can work wherever you want, and if you don't like what they're offering, then you are free to end the process there and not pursue it anymore. That's absolutely legitimate, okay? We all know this. The problem is that if you give off the vibe, you're saying, well, I don't know if I really want to work here yet. I'd have to see this and this and this and this to see if it's really worth me taking this job. The problem is that if you express that that's a turn off for the interviewer. I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're a recruiter, a hiring manager. I don't care if they're a CEO. I don't care if they're a board member. It's a turn off because we all have egos. And even though it's perfectly true, people don't like to be reminded of it. In the same way that if an interviewer, usually bad interviewers, bad recruiters, when you come looking for a job and you go to a job interview with them and they talk to you about what they're doing with other candidates, that's a turn off for the candidate. Hearing that, yes, I know you're dealing with other candidates. You're also looking at other people. I get that. But when you talk to me about that, it's a total turn off for me, right? So what I was trying to say in that video when it comes to salary expectations, and hopefully this makes sense to everyone, is that although these things are true, okay, it's generally just bad protocol to express them either directly, verbally, or through body language, or through your behavior, okay? That's a real thing, okay? And people starting out when you're young, you're starting out. I mean, learning these truths is very important. When you get a little bit more experienced, you then realize that, okay, certain things are true, but I shouldn't communicate them because it will not do me any favors to do this, right? And the whole point of going to a job interview is to get a job, like to pass the interview. Once you pass the interview and they offer you the job, then you can do what you like. Then you have more than one option, right? And you can decide at that point if it's worth your time. What's the point of going to a job interview, going through all that hard work and trouble to go to the interview for you to sort of decide in the first 30 seconds that, I'm not interested, right? It's like that's kind of a terrible waste of effort, right? Now, you might be not interested for a very good reason, and it may end up just not working out. Fine. But a lot of times, remember, first impressions are usually often wrong, and that's true for the employer as much as it is for the candidate, right? So once you get to the interview, usually the way to go is to try and get the job, get them to offer you the job, okay? Then at that point, then you can decide if after having gone through that process with them, if you're still interested in it, okay? That's usually a better strategy than sort of rejecting them out of hand based on a first impression, like when you just start dealing with them. Okay, so anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. I don't think that was communicated very effectively in that last video I did, but that was more of the whole story there. Jason says, greetings, did I miss anything? No, not really. Just me rambling on about stuff. I'm still waiting for some questions, so if people have any questions, I'm here to try and help. That's what these are for. So if you don't ask any questions, I guess I'm going to have to try and fill some dead air for a little while. Yeah. So in about a month or so, there's going to be some big changes coming to my channel. I'm going to be changing not the topic of the channel. I'm still going to be doing what I'm doing, but I don't know if I'm going to be doing the live streams and the members only videos and the live clips and stuff quite in that way. It's going to be a bit of a shift. So there you go. There you go. And also just while we're waiting, there's a little thing right here. It says join my channel. I had to take off the little subtext, because what you get for being a member of the channel when you join is you get a couple of things. You get members only videos, and you get preference for asking me questions and interacting with me. And you also get the ability to ask questions on the Beyond Employment live streams that I'm doing every Friday night, technically Saturday morning. And that live stream, those are for people that want to explore breaking away from what I call the life of corporate slavery, basically working as an employee. There are many ways to make money in this world. Being an employee in the employ of someone else is one way. Okay, it's a very popular way. It tends to be what people at sort of lower levels do. People at higher levels tend not to work as employees. Okay, I mean, obviously there are exceptions, but as we get to higher level occupations that pay more and more money, we tend to have less and less people who work as an employee for someone else, and more people that are initiating their own venture. Okay, either starting a company or they're investing, but they're not in the employ of someone else. So we explore that on the other live stream, the Beyond Employment live streams on late Friday night, where we talk about that, breaking away from that cycle of being an employee and possibly being exploited and really unleashing your potential. Okay, and I'll just say one more thing about it before we launch into answering questions, and that is that the idea is that if you are working as an employee and you have an employer that's engaging you, okay, the amount of essentially amount of money that you're bringing in, okay, you could represent it about this much. You're bringing in this much money. That's your value to the organization, okay? What they tend to give you in compensation tends to be about this much, okay? So that alone is a reason to possibly explore other ways of realizing your potential. It's not for everyone. Some people are perfectly happy being an employee. That's fine. All the more power to you. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, other people, they have a bit more of a calling in life. So that's what we talk about on Fridays. Okay, so we got some questions here. So Mariano Vargas. Mariano says, morning, top of the morning to you. Just graduated from university. Congratulations. Left my previous job because they wanted to get me stuck on pretty underwhelming positions. Okay. Currently unemployed and looking, but I'm sort of restless because even though the job applications say they want someone with certain characteristics and values, I consider myself assertive, confident, and with good communication skills. Okay. Seems like there's going to be more of that story coming. But yes, okay, look, right off the bat, what you've said so far, okay, I have a reaction to that. First of all, it's great that you graduated from university, and that's definitely a feather in your cap, okay? You picked up some skills and some capabilities, so that's great, okay? However, for most people's experience in life and in the world of employment is that it's like taking it's like learning to drive a car. You take the written test, that's like formal education, but then you have to take the practical where you learn to actually control the car and drive in traffic and all this kind of thing. That's work experience. And you need both to really be very potent, okay, to create a lot of value. So if you're just starting out in your first career job, okay, that's usually how it goes, okay? God knows that when I was young in my 20s, when I came out of university and things, I thought I knew it all. I didn't. Most people who are in their 20s, we all go through that, okay? There's tremendous strengths into being young. You have boundless energy, boundless passion and enthusiasm, a lot of raw energy to devote towards a cause or a mission. And that's great. We tend to lose that as we get older, generally speaking. Okay. Unfortunately, the drawback is that, we think we know it all, but we don't. There's actually a hell of a lot more to learn. And we realize this. This is not me talking down to people. This is most people's older selves, what they would say to their younger self. Okay. And sometimes it makes sense to start out kind of at the bottom where the rubber meets the road and then work your way up. Okay, so you can see how everything fits together. Okay, now let's continue the story here. Okay, because even though job applications say they want someone with certain characteristics and values, those are usually the things, from my experience, that make me unemployable. Wouldn't want to jump from job to job to leave a stain on my profile. Any advice would help. Okay, first off, that's an excellent question, Marino. Excellent question. More young people should be asking this question, okay, and trying to get answers to it. Number one, let's deal with the stupid things first. On your profile, which I take to mean your resume or your LinkedIn profile or something, you don't have to put anything on there. You can leave stuff off, okay? That's perfectly okay. Secondly, okay, you are absolutely correct. Okay, and I've actually done a video about this. A lot of employers say they want certain things, but really they don't, okay? What you're going to find, and you can take this from me, okay, in the world of business and employment by extension, there's a lot of double talk. There's a lot of people saying one thing and doing another. It's lip service, okay? And this is a prime example. What do employers say they want? They want people who think outside the box, right? These cliches. No, they don't. That's the furthest thing that they want, honestly, because what they want you to do is to shut up, do what you're told, keep your head down. That's what they want. They want an employee who's going to stay in that position and is going to do the job the way they tell you to do it, and not get above yourself and not reinterpret your job, right? Now, obviously there's exceptions to this, but the vast majority of situations that, employers are looking for employees, that's what they want. They don't want some kind of free thinking, questioning person who's going to want to change things and do it their way. They want a conformist. They want someone that can just do the job, and when they're told what to do, their default answer is yes, sir, right? That's the reality of these things, okay? Whether you work in a large organization or a small organization, that's pretty much how it goes, okay? Yes, there are exceptions, but and I know people are going to throw that back at me, but the overwhelming majority of job situations, that's what they're looking for. There's a whole bunch of other things that they say that are also equally bogus. They'll say, you like that word? Does that kind of date me, saying words like that? They'll say things like, we want someone, like what's the word? We want to hire the best, right? Like that's kind of one of the highest level things that they say. We hire the best. And they give the impression that what they're doing is they're looking for the absolute best candidate for each position that they're hiring for. Absolutely incorrect. That's not what they're doing. What they're looking for is someone who's adequate. Okay? Because the general belief, especially among lower level jobs, is that one person is as good as the next. They're fungible, they're interchangeable, they're all the same. It's like when you buy gasoline, do you buy it from this gas station or that gas station? It doesn't matter, it's all the same. That's how they view the labor pool, okay? So that's why if you go to a job interview and you show all this exceptional stuff you've done, maybe something outside the scope of the position they're looking for, usually the response that you encounter is, oh, you're overqualified, or oh, you're not a good fit. Things like this, right? I mean, that's evidence of this, right? And if you're absolutely boring and I want to say submissive, those are the people that end up getting the jobs, The number one factor is, do they like you? Which means, do you not rock the boat? Do you smile and agree with everything that they say? Do you not call them on, when they're being really stupid? Those are the people that tend to get hired, right? Generally. Okay, so this is a little bit of a reality check. It hits you like a slap in the face, especially when you're young and you first realize this, okay? If you want to blaze your own trail and, go on your own path and, things like this, which there's a lot of advantage in that. That's generally not regarded as great by the types of people that are judging you in a job interview. Generally, okay? This is all general. Obviously, there's exceptions to everything, and I know people usually beat me over the head with these like wild exceptions. They go, well, what about Steve Jobs? And my answer is, well, what about Steve Jobs? What about Elon Musk? What about him? That's one person out of the billions that go through this. Okay, so that's what I'll say. There's more here. And I'm going to go back and get to the other questions in a second. I just want to finish off Marino here. Those are usually the things that make me unemployable. Wouldn't want to jump from a job to leave a stain on my Yeah. Okay, so here we go. In my career law, the attorneys usually know each other and the talk a lot of trash behind each other's backs, so pretty toxic environment. Listen, Marino, most environments are toxic, okay? Like our definition of toxic. If you are talking about people talking about other people behind their back, unfortunately, I've seen that everywhere. I've been across 5 industries. I've worked in many capacities. I've also, been a consultant. I've looked inside of a lot of other companies and stuff, and that happens everywhere. I've never seen a place that doesn't do that. Okay, some of it a little more harsh than others, but you get that everywhere. Okay. Now listen, the thing that's going on there, and this is a long story, so I'll keep it short. The thing that's going on there is, when people know each other, and that helps get their foot in the door. Naturally, our first reaction to this is, it's all nepotism. It's all, people being jerks and not judging fairly and all this. But the thing is, if you know someone, what they're looking for is that personal reference, okay? Because when you hire a stranger, you have absolutely no idea what's up with this person. They could be a criminal. They could be crazy. They could have all kinds of weird personal problems. You just don't know, okay? They could be completely untrustworthy. Everything on their resume could have been a fabrication. They snowed you and they got a job under false pretenses. There's a lot of that. So the whole knowing someone is, I'm not going to say all the time, but most of the time, the way that works is simply because, I can vouch for this person. I know them already. I know that they're a decent, stable person. I know they've been employed for a long time. I know that people don't have any issues with them. You can work with them. You can talk to them. Things like this, right? So that alone fills probably about half the requirements that they're looking for in an employee, right? See what I just said 5 minutes ago about them wanting someone that's adequate and not rocking the boat and doing what they're told and just, that's what they're looking for. So already half the requirements are filled just by that. Now, there are ways for someone to kind of come in and get hired that way. I've talked about it extensively. People tend to tune out when I talk about that for some reason, but it really is a gem. Anyway, we're not going to get into that. Thank you, Marino. That was a great question. Hopefully that makes sense. Jason, we're going to go back a bit. Jason says, how can I bring value and show that I'm a good fit for the job without being exploited? Okay, first thing. Number one, you have absolutely no control over whether you are exploited or not. That's not up to you. The only power you have is to leave if they treat you a certain way, okay? But you can't influence an employer, okay? You really can't. Now, in extreme situations, if the employer is really not out to exploit you, but maybe there's a misunderstanding, you can call them on some stuff. It is possible to do it. There are employment standards, there are labor laws, there's human rights laws, all that kind of stuff, okay? If it's a blatant violation of those, it's as simple as a phone call to essentially blow the whistle on them and go down that path, okay? And people do that every day. I'm not a big, I don't encourage people to do it unless it's really blatant. Because if you just have a disagreement with somebody or you just don't like your boss or something like that, I mean, that's not what I'm talking about serious infractions, okay? But you basically don't have any power to control their behavior other than that. You just have the right to say no. You say, no, I'm not going to take this, and you leave, right? You find something better, you line up another job, and bam, you leave, okay? Now, if you're talking about how can you bring value and show that you're a good fit, well, those are two different things. Showing you're a good fit, that's basically in an evaluation, usually in a job interview, showing to them that you have all the stated requirements. Okay. You could speak to every one of the requirements they've said they're looking for. Okay. That's the beginning of a good fit. Okay. The second thing is to have all the soft skills there. Okay. The number one thing that they look for in an interview is whether they like you or not. Right. So being a good fit means being likable. Usually that's how most recruiters and hiring managers interpret that. And also being a fit for their culture, the way they do things there. Okay. So for example, if you worked as, you worked in the steel industry for 20 years, you're a welder, and the way everybody talks there is they drop F-bombs or something in every sentence, and they're very gruff and they yell at each other a lot, and that's considered normal, right? You then go and work as a receptionist in a office for a marriage counselor. Obviously, you can't behave the same way you did in that previous life, right? It's a completely different culture. The way things are done there, I'm sure, are quite different. Okay, so that's the other thing. Now, when in doubt, just be super polite, super personable, okay, and show you have all those soft skills, great communication skills. You understand protocol, what to say and do in what situation, and you can practice those and learn those. Those would be the most important thing, I think, for people in their 20s to learn. Okay, some people know them already, some people don't, but if you don't, brush up on that stuff. Just get on the internet and learn it, and then practice it in your interactions with people on a daily basis. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Thank you, Jason. That's another very intelligent question. We got Jason again. For example, doing a great action plan, they take the plan implemented, but don't hire me. Okay. Doing a great action plan, they take the plan implemented, but don't hire me. Oh, you mean you gave them the plan? Is that what you're saying? Well, if that's what you mean, that gets into a whole other thing, which is a con that recruiters do. They have to pay. In most countries in the world, they have to pay you if you're working for them. So a known con that some underhanded employers will do is they will post a job. They'll say, we're looking for someone who can do this work. There really isn't a job. It's all a con. You go to the interview. They say, yes, we're hiring. Can you give us a sample of your work? Here, do this work for me, and then we'll evaluate it. And then you give it to them. You deliver this thing to them. And then they promptly turn around, say, thank you for your time. There's no job. We're moving on. There was never a job. It was just a con to get you to do that work for them for free. Okay. That is a con. That is well known. Okay. Read more about it on the internet if you've been a victim of that. Okay. Yvonne says, good morning. Thank you so much for all you do. It really helps me a lot to watch you. Well, thank you very much, Yvonne. You are awesome, and you're especially awesome for saying it. It's great when people throw positivity out into the world. It's not only great on a humanistic level, it's very professional. If you keep doing that, people want to work with you. Very professional. WKC champion. WKC champion says, hello. Any advice to get visa sponsorship or to land a job in the U.S. immigrant? No, sorry. First of all, I'm not in the U.S. Secondly, immigration and work visas are not what I specialize in. Pavel, sorry for off-topic questions. Do you have live stream schedule? Couldn't find this info. Awesome streams. Don't want to miss one. Well, thank you very much, Pavel. That's very flattering. Okay. I do this live stream on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. where I am in North America in Central Time, 9 a.m. on Wednesdays. Okay, that's where I do this Q&A, how to get a job type live stream. Okay, the only other live stream I do is for me, it's very early Saturday morning. It's at 2 a.m. on Saturday morning. This is an experiment, by the way. And that's another live stream called Beyond Employment. Okay, that's once a week at that same time. That's where we talk about more than just getting a job. That's where we talk about starting companies and making money using other means, okay, and exploring that. So those are the 2 live streams that I do. So hopefully that makes sense. I honestly don't know how to post it because, I can post it, but everyone that watches is in a different time zone. So it's going to be a different time for you. And I don't think most people do the conversion, the GMT conversion in their head. I certainly don't. So, but that's the schedule. Thank you for asking. Dukem says, I have had the responsibilities of a network engineer in previous role or job, but I don't communicate this very well in an interview. Okay. I assume this is a problem, like you have it on your resume, but it's not prominent or something. Listen, what's really good is to do, like I've said this a bunch of times, is mock interviews, practice doing interviews, get a friend or a family member, someone, like I've said, just someone you find loafing around, see if they'll help you out and say, could you give me a hand? I'd like to do some practice job interviews. Could you do a pretend job interview with me and just interview me, right? And then try that, okay? But you have to be able to talk about your accomplishments and your capabilities and your traits, right? That's something that's very fundamental to doing well in a job interview. It's not like you're bragging and boasting, but you're just telling people, look, I've done this work. I've worked in this role for 2 years, let's say, and that involved doing this type of work. I performed this task. I was responsible for this. Okay. Being able to say that and just rattle that off without feeling weird or awkward is very important. So practice that. Okay. I'm sure there's some great resources online if you struggle with the exact phrasing of these things. Okay. But definitely work on that. Hopefully that helps. Communication skills are a lot of people's biggest challenge. Okay. They have the abilities, but interacting with other people and knowing how to communicate things and feeling comfortable communicating things is a big challenge that a lot of people have, especially if you're an introvert, like 50% of people on the planet. You're an introvert. You don't communicate with a whole bunch of strangers for fun. That's not your idea of fun. You can do it, but it's not what you do to unwind, put it that way. Okay. So you're normal if this doesn't come naturally to you. It's a skill like any other. And the more you practice and the more you learn, the better you get. It's just as simple as that. So you're doing fine. You're doing fine, Dukem. Just focus on that, learn a little bit about it, and start practicing it. Okay, it's like playing a musical instrument. A lot of people, they just want to be able to sit down at a piano and play this like extremely complicated thing with no mistakes first time. As I'm sure that would be unrealistic. In the same way, for a lot of people, performing well in an interview or doing public speaking is exactly the same thing. It's a skill that you have to learn. You learn the theory of, and then you practice. And anyone can do it. That's the thing. This is what we found. This is what management scientists have found when they were studying leadership for the last 50 years. Okay. The big question was, what traits do you need to be a leader? Okay. That's one of the fundamental questions of management in the area of organizational theory. And they applied a lot of scientific learning to this, and they discovered that leaders are not born, they're made. Okay, because just when you think something like great public speaking skills is essential for all leaders, you find that, first of all, you have some leaders that don't have great public speaking skills. Any trait, insert trait. You might think, high intelligence is a trait. No, I can find examples where, famous leaders didn't have that. Any trait, insert any trait. No trait is essential. You can't pin down what makes a great leader. Okay. The other thing that they found was that people who tend to be good at things, they weren't, some of those things they weren't naturally good at. When they started out, they're actually very poor in that area, but they artificially developed it by working on it. It didn't come naturally. So that's the other thing they found. So that tends to suggest that anybody can be great at anything if you're willing to put in the time and effort. Okay, so it was things like this that they found. So don't be worried or surprised if some things don't come naturally to you. I mean, I'm an introvert. Public speaking and social interaction did not come naturally to me. And I mean, even today, I'm not amazing at it. It's something that I've had to work my whole life, my whole career to try and develop. And the more you work, the more you practice, the better you get. So you're doing fine. You're just at the beginning of a journey. Okay? And a lot of technical people are in that boat. Okay? And by the way, social interaction is more than just how to speak to somebody. If you can look them in the eyes and speak fluently, there's more to it than that. I've met a lot of people who can do that, but when you come to work with them, it's awful. You know, they can speak fluently, but then they always have to get their own way, and they always have to show the other person is wrong, and you know, things like this, like that's more like higher level personal interaction skills. Okay, so it's a journey, and a lot of people aren't even on that journey, so they're never going to develop those skills. Whereas a lot of people here, I mean, presumably you're here to to improve yourself. You guys have a head start because at least you're wherever you are on this journey, you're at least focusing on this problem. Okay, where did I leave off here? Nessa B says, "This is my first time on your channel. I'd like to thank you for your information. Currently, I'm obtaining my MBA and working full time. I have no experience as a leader by title." Well, thank you very much, Nessa. That's very nice of you to say that. And you're awesome, by the way. And an MBA can be a very valuable thing. And getting it while you're working full time is not easy. So, and I know that. I know what I'm talking about. So, my hat's off to you. Figuratively and literally. That's great. Anshuman, if I'm saying that right, Anshuman says, "Who should you reach out for update on your interview process? The HR or the technical lead who took your interview?" Okay, when you say HR, I'm assuming you mean recruiter, okay, who works in the HR department. When you say technical lead, I assume you mean hiring manager, who, if you got the job, you would be working for them. They would be your boss. So that would be the hiring manager. Now, the answer to that is it depends. I mean, if you were dealing with the technical lead, okay, and they were interacting with you setting up the interview, then it's logical that you would follow up with them. If, on the other hand, the recruiter was the one that set up the interview, that said we'd like to bring you in for an interview and coordinated the whole thing, you could ask them. But there is no wrong answer. You could follow up with both of those people. Okay. If it were me and I'd already met the technical lead, personally, I would follow up with the technical lead. That's just me. That's probably not protocol, but that's what I would do, because by following up, under some circumstances, it can signal to them that you're enthusiastic about it. Okay. You care. You want the job. And these are great things that you want to communicate to them. Okay. That can also get you an interview, by the way, that kind of thinking. Okay. You contact a recruiter and you say, like, I've noticed this job posting, I have this. Do you think I should apply for this job? And if they were, oh God, why can't I talk anymore? And they say yes, then you're like, okay, great. Well, then you apply, and then you have another response to them where you say, as per your suggestion, here is my application. I've thought about it, and I think this would be a great fit for me. Let me know if there's anything else you want. So you're interacting a little bit more than the standard candidate who's just responding once to a job application and there is no personal communication back and forth. Lion, I recognize the name. You've been here before, so that's awesome. You are automatically awesome. Lion, my resume gives me interviews, but due to personal reasons, I have a very long gap and it's hurting me. I did some studies within that period, and I do mention it, but it doesn't make the difference. Well, unfortunately, Lion, I mean, that's all you can do. I mean, beyond fabricating something, I mean, that's, if you did have a long gap and you did do some studies during your gap and you say, like, they question you about the gap, you could say, well, I went back to school and I took these qualifications and these qualifications are relevant. Now, if they don't accept that and don't see it as something good, there's not a whole hell of a lot you can do with that employer, okay? But that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say, okay? Assuming you have the experience that they're looking for and you have all the qualifications and other things that they're looking for, you know, just keep going, because that's, you know, you're in a perfectly reasonable situation. You're explaining it in a very reasonable way, you know, just keep going. That's all I can really say to that. Now, I suppose there could be a possibility that they don't believe you when you give a justification for the work gap. So I'm not sure of the details, so I can't speak to that. But I would just make sure that, you know, you have a very sort of watertight explanation of it. Okay. Nessa B again. Are there entry-level positions that you'd recommend for me to apply to? Now, Nessa B, were you the MBA? Yes, MBA. Well, listen, here's the thing. Depending on what industry you're in, an MBA is kind of a real oddball thing, because on the surface, it gives you more value, you have more education, you have more capabilities, more skills, etc., etc. On the other hand, it can be a deterrent, because if you're applying for an entry-level job, usually someone with an MBA would not be in an entry-level job. Okay, so it overqualifies you, right? That's the catch. Now, it depends what industry, it depends what role, and it depends on, you know, what they're looking for. Okay, but if they're not specifically looking for an MBA, it can lead to that horrible moniker of being overqualified. Okay. Is it crap? Yes, it's crap. It's stupid. This is how recruiters think, because they don't know what the value is of having any of these stuff firsthand. Okay. I mean, how many recruiters have MBAs that are hiring for MBAs? Some, but a tiny minority. Okay. Now, the best bet for that is to hire at a place that, you know, okay, first of all, they're looking for someone with an MBA. Secondly, the person making the decision, they themselves have an MBA. Okay, so they will recognize the value of it, right? That can help too. My feed just skipped. Sorry, where was I here? Oh, okay, yeah. So Nessa, entry-level positions that you'd recommend me to apply to. Yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily go for an entry-level position. I would go for something a little bit above entry-level, maybe one step above, if you're capable of like meeting a lot of the requirements. What I would actually do, and you know this was coming sooner or later, because we encounter this situation soon enough on these live streams, is I wouldn't just apply to jobs. How do I put this? I call it standard channels. People who see a job posting and respond to it with an application, and then they deal with recruiters. Okay. That's what I call standard channels for HR. Okay. I would go outside standard channels. I would go to use the method that, in all honesty, is more popular than standard channels, which is networking. That is the great equalizer. That is the way of overcoming all of these silly little barriers, okay? Where what you do is you don't sell yourself on your resume. You sell yourself on your interaction with them. They see that A, you're professional, B, you're likable, C, you've got initiative, you're passionate because you're the one initiating the interaction, okay? So already you've got someone with passion and initiative, you've got someone that's professional, and you've got someone that's likable, okay? That's the majority of what they're looking for the majority of jobs, okay? Now, assuming you have the absolute technical requirements, okay? Like if they're wanting a dentist and you're not a dentist, I mean, obviously it's not going to work, right? But assuming you have the technical skills to do the job, right? That alone can get around any silly little HR created artificial barrier like what we've been talking about, being overqualified, right? Because you have an MBA but might not have as much work experience as they're looking for. Okay? So I would look into that. I'm not going to go into the whole thing today. I have some videos on my YouTube channel. The best one to show you what I mean by this is a video called, what was it called? It was called How Successful People Get Jobs. Okay? So on YouTube, just in the search box, type the company's expert and then How Successful People Get Jobs. Check out that video. That gives you a sort of illustration of what I'm talking about here, that method. Okay, if you want to go deeper, as with everything else, I have my course here, my Get Hired course, link in description, if anyone wants to go deeper. But hopefully that helps. Yvonne, thank you very much. You're absolutely welcome, Yvonne. Great, 9 a.m. and I'm in the north too. CA, like Canada? Awesome. WKC champion, thank you. Anyway, your channel is awesome and I really learn a lot from your videos. Well, thank you for saying so. WKC champion. That's great. And I predict great things in your future because you're trying to improve yourself. You know, a lot of people don't. A lot of people just wing it. And even when things don't work out, they don't change the plan. They just keep going without questioning, without trying to change anything. You know, so you're going to have a little bit of a natural advantage because you're actually trying to work on the problem. Lion, what can I do? What can I say if I have a very long gap? Mentioning I did some studies within that period doesn't seem enough when applying for a management position. I'm against others without gap. Well, look, I mean, Lion, like I was just saying, okay, like if this is like a major problem, you've applied to hundreds of places, you've got, you know, like a dozen interviews and this always kills you, and you know that, okay? I would do what I always advocate for, which I just said, which is don't play this game. Don't go through recruiters. They're going to look at your resume and look at a work gap and disqualify you from that, right? Try networking, okay? Networking allows you to get away from all these stupid little rules that recruiters come up with. I mean, think about it. Somebody had a work gap. Who cares? Does that make them not a good employee? Does that make them less valuable, really? No, it doesn't. We all know this. It's common sense, okay? This is another one of these stupid little rules that HR creates to disguise the fact that they have no idea how to assess people. Okay? You know, I sympathize with people in situations like you. It's the same thing for anybody changing careers. You know, you're 40 years old, you've spent 20 years in one career, but now you want to make a change. Now, if you got hired like this, you would never be able to do that because the first thing any recruiter is going to ask you is, how much experience do you have in this new job, this new career you're applying for? And you would have to say, well, 0, I'm changing careers. For the last 20 years, I did this other thing. And they would say, okay, well, how can you possibly think you're qualified to do it? Right? And they would reject you. right? These stupid little rules, because they don't know how to assess a person, okay? Now for some people, that might be an honest, an accurate appraisal. But for most people, it isn't. It's ridiculous, right? So you avoid all of that by going through networking. Don't talk to a recruiter, talk to the hiring manager. Reach out to them and say, look, I would absolutely love to do this. I have these skills, those skills, this, I'm passionate about this. I love your company. I know you guys do work in this area, right? If ever you're looking for somebody, let me know. I'd make a great one of these. Now, there's other ways. I mean, that's like the simplest possible thing to do, but there's other ways that are more effective. They're a little bit more complex. Okay. But check those out. That's what I call the great equalizer. It's the way to get around all these stupid little rules that HR has created that they think that helps you to find a better employee. It doesn't. What they're doing is they're not looking for better employees. They're looking for low risk employees. It's not the same thing. Okay. And unfortunately, you're on the wrong end of this. You just happen to land on the wrong end of it. You could have been tending to a sick parent or, dealing with circumstances outside of your control. We all know that has absolutely no bearing on your capabilities as an employee, right? Okay. So if you've tried playing this game and it's not going anywhere and it's an impasse, you've hit a brick wall, go outside of it. Okay. You could learn about this from beginning to end in my course, but you don't have to give me any money or anything. Go and do your own research on this. Okay. It's a well-known thing. And the higher people go, okay, in the sort of org chart, the more and more people get hired like this. When they want to hire a CEO or a board member, they don't put out a job a job posting and say, looking for a CEO, resumes accepted. It's like, 95% of the time they don't do that, right? So make this work for you. This is something that's totally possible. The great thing about it also is that you're not up against a lot of competition. So that makes it even easier. And if you do this and you are competing for a job that they've posted, you're going to be the only candidate they've actually met before the process begins. So already your resume jumps to the top of the pile because the hiring manager has met you and they like you. And you're the only one that showed initiative enough to reach out to them proactively. Okay. So look into that approach. Okay. And that's the thing that can overcome this. If the hiring manager likes you and sees that you know what you're talking about and you have the skills, they're not going to give a rat's ass about a work gap. You know what I mean? That's stuff that recruiters worry about when most recruiters have no knowledge of these jobs that they're applying for. Okay. Anyway, that's what I'll say about that. Okay. I'm falling really far behind. I'm going to have to catch up quickly here. Okay. Milton23 says, I like most advices you give and you are very positive and encouraging. Instills a lot of confidence. Well, thank you. That's the only way to be, Milton. I try not to let pessimism get to me. That's part of, I'm not saying I'm a master at this or anything, but that's part of good interpersonal skills. If you're putting out positivity and you're pleasant to deal with, more people will want to deal with you. And if more people want to deal with you, that tends to open doors for you. If you turn off everybody that tries to interact with you, generally great things don't happen. So yeah. I try and do that. I don't always succeed, though, as I might have just demonstrated a minute ago. Here we go. Uncle BG1. I love reading people's usernames. They reveal something sometimes about people's personality. At least in my head, they do. Would you suggest using a sticky note with a kind of script when on an online interview, or is that not suggested? I sometimes can't remember my answers and thought this could work. Yeah, if you can do it, without them sort of letting on that you're reading from a note or something, sure, yeah, why not? You know, I mean, the problem is it can backfire. If they see that you're reading from a note, it can be a turnoff, right? But having like a little aid around is not a deal breaker. It's not a showstopper. It depends on how you do it, okay? But if you can do it pretty seamlessly, you just kind of glance there, and what really helps is if this was me, this is what I would recommend, okay? Instead of writing like out verbatim what you're going to say, I would write like points, like topics, things to mention. So, one word, and it just sort of jogs your memory. So you remember the point, but you're not actually reading off like a cue card, okay? That's the way I would recommend most people to go about doing it. TQ, I agree. Don't talk to many people face to face, but when practicing interview questions with friends, it gets easier. Yeah, and you know what? When you do mock interviews with your friends or a family member, you are going to feel awkward and nervous. Like it's part and parcel of this, right? You feel like the pressure's on. That's actually a good thing because it's actually preparing you for an accurate appraisal of what the real thing is going to feel like. Okay. A lot of people can get their answers right and stuff when they're calm and collected and nobody's watching them. The challenge is to be able to perform when you're out of your comfort zone. You got a couple of people staring at you and you're in an unfamiliar place. You're not on your own turf, and you feel like the pressure's on. Okay. So practicing under those conditions is a good thing. Now, the way I would go about doing it and what I'd recommend is, first of all, practice your answers by yourself. Get to the point where you have memorized kind of what you're going to say to most questions, right? Once you're at that point, then you can work at then doing that under social pressure. Okay, so that's where you do a mock interview with friends or family. Okay, don't start off doing a mock interview and just you don't know anything, right? Practice by yourself. Okay, do some research, figure out what the questions are, figure out what the answers are, get that down, and then work on mock interviews with somebody else. That's what I would recommend. Carol says, great to be here. It's great to have you, Carol. Thank you for joining us. You're awesome. Duke M says, thank you for that knowledge. How would you explain a work gap from mid-2019 to now? How can we phrase or think or approach about this to develop a proper response? Well, I mean, it depends what the reality is. If you were sick and that was a problem, I don't think there's a problem in saying that. If you were laid off because your company was downsizing because of world events that started in 2019, I think that's perfectly okay to say that. I don't think that there's an issue. Now, mid-2019 to now, that's how many years? So that's 20, 21, 22. So that's like 3 years. Now, I'm assuming that well, basically, I need to know what the real reason is to know how you would explain it, right? Do you mention anything else? No. So, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to tell you how to phrase it when I don't know what the answer is. If it's just you can't find employment, okay? Let's pretend that was the reason. You've tried, maybe you were laid off, but then you had problems finding employment during the pandemic and subsequent events. Now, if that's the thing you have to explain, okay, that's where you have to tread carefully. The reason they care about a work gap, this is in the mind of recruiters and some hiring managers, is because if you've had trouble finding employment and they know this, without knowing anything else about you, they will assume that, oh, this person has problems finding employment. Maybe something's wrong with them. Maybe there's a reason for that. Okay? And that makes you, in their eyes, a higher risk candidate. Okay? So the thing to do is not to communicate that you have a work gap because you had problems finding employment. Okay? Even though that's probably the reality. So that's why I would say, like, my standard response to that, and I've said this before, is, try and get a legitimate reason why you were off that time. So let's say it's been 3 years since you worked last, okay, because you can't find a job. Go and take some kind of online course, some free course, whatever. That's relevant. That's relevant to the job you're applying for. It's in your area, okay? It's in your area of expertise, your specialty. And then you can say, well, I left, or I was laid off, but I immediately decided, you know what? I'm going to take this opportunity rather than just rejoining the workforce. I'm going to take this opportunity to brush up on my skills, okay, to learn my trade or my craft or my profession. And so I took a lot of online training. I took several courses, and here I am. Now, that's not a complete lie, because if you've actually taken some training courses, you have taken some training courses in that work gap, and you're sort of giving maybe a more acceptable answer, okay, that says, look, I wasn't working during this time, but it's not a concern. It's not because I'm unemployable, okay? So that's how I would handle it, that basic approach. Hopefully that helps. Juan says, good evening from the Philippines. I am a fresh graduate, and I would like to ask if I have to speak what interviewers wanted to hear, or just be honest and be myself. Okay, so if you talk to a recruiter and you say, what should I do in an interview? The recruiter will say, well, be yourself, be honest. Always be honest. Just, if we ask you a question, just tell us the honest answer, right? Unfortunately, that is not to your advantage, okay? Now, for people who work in sales, you know what I'm talking about here. If you're trying to sell something, okay, you're not going to sell a product saying, buy this product. Here's a cup, okay? Buy this cup. It usually doesn't break. Sometimes it does, but, it's okay. I just buy another one and, I'm fine, right? And, it's good. Is that going to sell that cup? No, it isn't, because I'm talking about a bunch of negative things on it, right? Now, in a job interview, you're selling yourself. Okay, that's what you're doing. That's the whole point of it. They're talking to several candidates. You're one of them. They could go with any one of you. They're wanting to pick, in their mind, the best one. Okay? So candidate A comes along and says, I've got everything you need. There are no issues. There are no concerns. I would love working here. I get along great with everyone. I'm a hard worker, and I respect authority, right? Candidate B comes along and says, I've had several jobs and I'm a pretty good worker, but sometimes I hate it when people, annoy me, when they go out of their way to annoy me. And, when the boss is being unreasonable, it makes me angry. And, I really wish that I could make more money than I do, but, I guess this is good. And I'm not particularly passionate about this company, but I think it's fine. Which one would you hire, right? Now, most people are going to hire candidate A because they don't know either of these people, but everything that they've heard so far from candidate A has been good. It's pretty much what they want to hear. Candidate B could be really good, but already in your very first encounter with them, you're picking up things that could be a concern, right? That's how these people think. So unfortunately, for most situations where you're dealing with a recruiter, okay, giving full and complete information and being honest about everything isn't always to your advantage. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you lie and you fabricate a bunch of things, but you have to be selective as to what you say. Like, if I was trying to sell this cup, I don't want to say this is a magic cup. Okay. If you rub this cup for good luck every morning, okay, you will be rich within 3 months. Okay. So buy this cup. That's not a good way to sell the cup. Okay. There's actually a lot of problems that you'll get into if you take that approach. Okay. People will buy the cup, but then they'll get extremely upset with you when your promises don't come true, and things like this, right? So same thing. It's kind of an analogy. Same thing. If you invent a bunch of accomplishments and things, obviously that's not going to work out to your advantage. They're probably going to find out, especially if it's something big, and then that's it. Not only will you be fired, you'll be blacklisted, and it could be a big problem. So you have to say things that are true, but be selective about it. Okay, that's the approach, right? Recruiters don't like that, because what they would like to do is they'd just like to say, so what's your weakness? And you say, oh, my weakness is I have a very short attention span. I don't like being told what to do. And they say, okay, well, thank you. Thank you for telling me that. It's great that you're so honest. And then they eliminate you because of it, right? That's what they want to do. They're extremely lazy that way. They don't want to actually get to know someone. They would just like to ask you, so what's wrong with you? And you tell them, because everybody's going to have negative points. Every single person is going to have negative points. So if you just give them a laundry list of your negative points, your big reward is they eliminate you. Great, you're honest. Unfortunately, that's the game that they're playing. It's like poker. You play poker, right? Anybody plays a card game, right? You bet money, and it's you could make a bet and you could be bluffing, right? You call someone's bet, or you could not be bluffing, right? It's like you're not cheating, where you're like putting down different cards than the ones you were dealt, right? But you're not just saying, here's my cards, right? Here's what I've got, right? So there's a little bit of selective truth. Everything you say is the truth. It's just that you're not going to disclose absolutely everything unvarnished when they ask, right? You're going to make yourself look as good as you can be without lying. It's just that simple. Negotiation is the same thing. Okay, I think once again, this feed jumped, so I have to find out where I was. Sorry about this. I always get a little bug-eyed when I'm doing this. It's hard to read this font. I really need to get a better setup here. This is still pretty basic. Okay, I think I'm here. So Nessa B said, thank you for your suggestion. I appreciate your time. Thank you for taking the trouble to be here, Nessa. Hopefully it worked for you. Okay, that's a person. Okay says, elaboration on previous question that was in relation to senior position. And interviews dragged to more meetings, Q&A, and went silent to think about their decision. It became about the business. Sorry, you lost me on that one. Okay, if you could rephrase that, I'd be happy to respond to it. Carol says, my boss keeps forgetting to do one-on-one meetings with us. I really wanted him to give me feedback on my performance goals. I just want to gauge where I'm at. What is the best way to get his attention? Well, right off the hop, Carol, my gut reaction to that is that's a bad boss. What I used to do is I had one-on-one meetings with all my direct reports once a month. And the thing to do was not to defer those meetings or move them around all over the place. It was to prioritize them. Because if you start doing that, it signals to your employees, your direct reports, that they're not important to you. Okay? And I would do 1 hour-long one-on-one meeting with each direct report per month. Okay? And it's a two-way communication. You close the door. They can tell you what's going on. You can explain things to them if you need to, but it's basically getting their feedback and you making clear expectations and things like this, and just making sure everything is on the same page. It's very important. It's an investment in your employees. Now, it sounds like this boss is not doing that. Now, if they're not doing it, without knowing the details, I would assume that maybe they're not prioritizing it as much as they should. Okay, now if they're not prioritizing it, if that is what's going on, then it's just not a priority for them. Now, what's the best way to get his attention? Now, if it were me and your boss has an office and you're physically located in the same place, like in the same building, I would simply go and meet with them in their office. I'd go up to them, no appointment or anything, and just knock on the door and say, hey, you got a couple minutes? And, I would do this at a time when they're not stressed out and they're not in a rotten mood. Usually the best time to do this kind of thing is immediately after lunch on a Friday. Okay, if you're working like a regular day shift, office hours, on normal weekend, Saturday, Sunday off, on a Friday, just after lunch, people come back from lunch, usually in a better mood. It's Friday. Do it then, okay? So if they go from lunch from noon to 1 o'clock or something on a Friday, at 1:30, go to their office. If they're in their office, knock on the door, say, hey, you got 2 minutes? And then maybe they have 2 minutes, but not more. Then say, like, look, listen, I would very much welcome your feedback on my performance and on my role. And I'd like to also get your suggestions on a couple of things. Would you have, say, 20 minutes? Can we schedule 20 minutes at some time of your convenience? And I'd very much appreciate that. And then see what they say. Now, if that doesn't work, then I don't know if anything really is going to work. You know what I mean? I think that's beyond reasonable, okay? And you can't force people to do things your way if they don't want to, okay? Especially if you're the employee and they're the boss, okay? So after you do that, the ball's not in your court anymore. You've done your due diligence to try and fix that, okay? Now, as a last resort, and there's some really pressing issue here that needs to be resolved, you could go over the boss's head to their superior. You could say, I have concerns. I've tried to address this with my boss, but they keep dismissing me. They keep deferring any scheduled meetings we might have. And, the message I'm getting is that it's not important for them, but this is very important for me. And I'm not sure what I should do. And I'm looking for your suggestions. You could do that, but in order for you not to break protocol and to do it professionally, you would have to inform your boss that if they can't accommodate you, your intention would be to raise it, at a higher level. You say, like, listen, I really need to do this. I understand you're busy. I understand this is not something that, you normally do, but it's very important to me. It's very important for me to do my job. And just so you know, I'm hoping I can resolve this with you. But one way or another, I need it resolved, just so you're aware of that. Okay? So that's what I would do if it were me. Okay? Hopefully that helps. Lion says, thank you. I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you, Lion. I best of luck with that. I know it's not an easy situation to be in. Wyndham Thomas. Did you send in a question earlier? Wyndham Thomas says, excuse me, I meant the recruiter. Okay, recruiter. Okay, I don't have a previous question from you, Wyndham, if you could send that in. It sounds like this is sort of the second thing you've said. Marino, getting some absolute gems of advice from the stream. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for saying so, Marino. I'm glad it's at least somewhat helpful. Juan, thank you so much, sir. You're absolutely welcome, Juan, and I love your name. I wish I had a name like Juan. It sounds so debonair and sophisticated. Oscar says, hey, I love your content. What are your thoughts on people that don't have a degree? Oh, they're bastards to a man. That's my thoughts on it. No, I'm just kidding. Everyone tells me that it is impossible to move up on the career ladder without a degree. No, it is not impossible. It depends where you are. Like if you work in a highly regulated industry or a very formal industry or a very mature industry, they've been around for a very long time. A lot of times that can be the case. Okay. Like, for example, if you want to work in law or medicine, you need a degree. It's an absolute essential requirement. Other places, Not so much. In fact, a company I worked for 20 years ago, they were so amateur. They were like, I've never seen a bunch of people. The organization was big, like really big. And it was very old. It was very big. And, but yet, amazingly, cripplingly incompetent. We were bad at our business. We were losing money year over year and for many years in a row. And it was simply because we were propped up by a large, even larger, sort of parent company. I've never seen, and they had vice presidents that had no schooling. You had vice presidents that were mechanics. And I'm not knocking mechanics, but if you're like the vice president of continuous improvement or something like this, but you've never been to school other than to work on a car, sorry, no dice. You need more learning than that. You would think that people would have realized this, but apparently people don't. So, hey, the sky's the limit, certainly in organizations like that. There are more competent organizations that you don't require a degree if you have other things, okay? If, first of all, you're very professional. You're very professional in your dealings with others, in your interaction. You understand protocol. You understand how to collaborate. You can even lead people. You can be the boss. You can manage teams, and you can get consensus. All your employees love you. You meet your goals. Blah, 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 right? You have lots of experience. So you've been around the block several times, and you know the ins and outs of the business and everything you need to do. You've been working with people for a very long time. Yeah, you don't need a degree for that. And also, it's in an industry where, maybe you've risen above the level where you really need sharp technical skills, okay? If you're managing a team of technical people, you will need some technical skills. But if you're at a level higher than that, maybe you don't need up-to-date, sharp technical skills. When you look at a lot of managers that are above the sort of mid-level manager, when was the last time they used their technical skills? And their technical skills are woefully outdated anyway, right? So you find all these situations out in the real world, okay? I can't speak for what industry you're in, but just because you don't have a degree doesn't necessarily mean that there's a real cap on what you can do, okay? And to take it to an extreme, and this is what I talk about on my Friday streams, I've met, for example, mechanics. I was knocking mechanics, I guess, a moment ago. I remember a couple of years ago meeting a mechanic who went out on his own, started a group of companies, and is now like a multimillionaire. He owns several businesses, and they just keep growing. You know what I mean? So, I think degrees are good. If you get a degree in an area that isn't like a Mickey Mouse area, like it's an actual real area where you have real world skills, okay, and you have capabilities because of your education, that's great. But that's certainly not the be all end all. There's a lot of other things that you need to know. And I see a lot of young people coming out of school that have a degree and they've never had a real career job before, and they think they know it all. And then they're amazed that they don't. I think someone earlier in the chat, and I'm not being mean, but I'm just saying, someone earlier in the chat was in this situation, it seemed. You come out of school and then it's hard getting hired. And this is a real shock to people. They're like, I got a degree. How could you not hire me? I know everything. And the reality is you don't. There's more to learn. You need to figure out what that is and then learn it. And then you'll be very, very valuable. People will instantly hire you. And there's ways of doing it. Where was I here? God, this thing keeps jumping all over the place. Yeah, so don't worry, Oscar, okay? Like, it depends what your goal is. It depends what industry you're in, but that alone does not stop you, okay? If you have the other things. If you have an inquiring mind, you're highly trainable, you're willing to learn, you're willing to step outside of yourself and push yourself, to learn other things that maybe you never thought about before, the sky's the limit. The flip side, I'll just say, is don't underestimate people that have degrees. Okay. I've seen that. I've seen a lot of people who don't have degrees that are successful that then look down on people who have a degree and they devalue the degree. They say degrees, it's all crap. You don't need one. It's useless. It's pointless. Wrong. It's not. Okay. Juan says, hello, good sir. Hello, Juan. This is a different Juan, I think, right? Yeah. We got two people named Juan here. You guys are awesome. I just said that name is an awesome name. So way to go. Juan says, how patient is too patient when waiting to hear back after the first interview? Okay, listen. You're going about this wrong, okay? Who gives a crap about when they follow up? Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when they feel like getting back to you. You are moving on, okay? I know this is easier said than done, but this is the way you have to think about these things. You apply for jobs. Someone calls you for an interview. You go to the interview. You do the best you can. Then, after it's done, you focus on the next thing. You don't wait by the phone. You don't hand wring over like, oh no, if only I follow up in this particular way, then it'll increase my chances. No, you keep going, okay? A lot of times, if they're serious, they will follow up with you very quickly, okay? But there's always exceptions to that. There's people that have gotten jobs where the person informed them like a month later that they passed the interview. That's not typical, but it has happened, okay? So the thing that I see is I see people, what they do is they go for an interview and then they wait by the phone. And in that time, until they hear, they have stopped applying for jobs. They have stopped moving forward, okay? Don't do that. Your focus should always be on creating the next opportunity for yourself, okay? Okay, so if they get back to you, great. However, it doesn't matter. In the meantime, you are taking more interviews. You're getting more job offers. You're getting more interviews lined up, okay? That's the way to do it. Okay, Juan, you're awesome, okay? Don't let these people play psychological games for you. If they call you back, great. In the meantime, you're moving forward. Lena Walker says, my question disappeared. Weird. Here it is again. Lena, I know that YouTube puts some filters. I don't fully understand it, but they put some filters on things. So if your question is disappearing, maybe that's what's going on. Just maybe try rephrasing it, depending on what you wrote. Dukem says, mid-2019 till now, I did get 2 certifications in my IT field. I did 3 to 4 IT consulting jobs for companies from friend recommendations. This is very little work for about 2.5 years in regards to IT work. Well, it seems like you're doing the networking because you got stuff from friend recommendations. That's great. That's the way forward, okay? It doesn't really matter in a way. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say this, but what I honestly feel is that it doesn't really matter what the recruiters are thinking. You know, they might have silly little rules like, oh, if the person hasn't worked in the last 6 months, that means their skills are out of date, right? I've seen stupidity like that. You know, who knows what's going through their head? But the way to avoid all of that, to sort of circumvent all those silly little retarded rules that they come up with, okay, is to just do networking, okay? Especially in IT. Because let me tell you something. In IT, you get a lot of technical people that have underdeveloped social skills and interaction and interactive skills, like whether it's communication skills, whether it's interpersonal skills, you know, collaboration skills, all of that, in my experience, tends to be underdeveloped in the technical areas. And I can say that because I started out in a technical area. I'm a technical person. That's where I started. Okay, I didn't come up through sales or anything else. I was a technical person. I have a degree in engineering. And that's the sad reality. These people, they think they're awesome. And they are. They're extremely bright. However, this is their Achilles heel, okay? Dealing with other people, how to contact other people, what to say to them, you know? When I meet them, how do I act? What do I do? You know, things like this. That's their weak spot. So if you can develop those skills and go and explore the networking side of this, okay, you will have a tremendous advantage over most other people in your field. Okay? You will be the one that customers, investors, clients, you'll be the one that they want to deal with. Okay? If you can develop this. And coincidentally, it's also the way to overcome these issues to get a job, if that's what your goal is right now. Okay? So that would be my recommendation. Okay? You've already sort of seen how, from what you've written here, the beginnings of that, the jobs you have, the consulting work you've had, you've gotten it through friend connections, right? That's how this stuff works. And if you don't happen to have friends, you can easily make friends by reaching out to them if you know what to say and you know how to do it. Incidentally, that's partially what my course is about. Okay, but you know, either way, learn this stuff. Okay, yeah, I'm saying this because it will be to your tremendous advantage to do so. Okay, you will come out on top. Someone who's strong in a technical area that's also great as a person to deal with, that's very powerful. Okay, that's like executive material right there. Okay, if you tack on, apart from like protocol and you tack on knowledge of business, that's executive grade material. Okay, I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but that's what it's about. Duke M, not good to mention divorce, right? Well, look. I don't know specifically about mentioning divorce in a job interview. If someone mentioned that to me, it wouldn't be a deal breaker. It doesn't seem like a dirty word, but it also falls under a negative, right? So I would try not to mention anything negative, including a divorce, right? You know, just like when they say, why did you leave your last job? You know, and you don't say, well, I hated it, or my boss didn't like me, or I didn't like my boss. Like, all of those are negative, right? And all of them is like, when you're making a first impression and they don't know anything else about you, their first impression is now negative. Oh, that's the person that had a failed marriage. I remember them. Yeah. Didn't get a good vibe, right? Oh, that's the person that, they were fired from their last job because they hated their boss. I don't like them, right? So it's not that, as far as I'm concerned, it's not that divorce in itself is a bad thing to mention. It's just that it's a negative thing, and I wouldn't mention a negative thing. It doesn't seem like there's any reason where you have to be talking about that, right? If you had a work gap and they said, well, why weren't you working? And you said, well, it was a divorce, right? Now, if it's a year-long work gap, that wouldn't really explain it anyway. And if it was a really short work gap, I would just not have that on my resume. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my thoughts on that. My thoughts are not really super thought out. I'm just sort of reacting to it, but that's sort of my impression. Okay, we have someone in Cyrillic script here. Says, hello from Ukraine. Oh, stay safe, Ukraine. Thank you for your videos. My absolute pleasure. What is the best way to behave at the end of the trial period? Should I ask for a pay rise? What's the best way to argue? Is the load much higher than expected? That's several questions all in one. Okay, short answers. I wouldn't necessarily ask for a pay rise at the end of your trial period unless that was some kind of agreement or expectation that has some kind of weight to it. Okay, so just as a default thing, I wouldn't do that. I would work for a little while, and I have kind of mixed feelings about asking for a pay rise. Usually it doesn't work. Usually you have to force the employer's hand anyway. What's the best way to argue? Well, most people have very underdeveloped abilities there, and I'm not a master myself, but telling someone that they're wrong is guaranteed failure right there. Because as soon as somebody hears that, they tune out, and you've now become the enemy, and they now are not listening to anything you say, and they're not counting anything you say. They're not considering anything you say. So what can be effective is to focus on a common result that both people want. We both want to do the right thing for the organization, something like that. And then you work back in that much we agree, and then you work back from there. I think the best way is this, but I know that there's other approaches, and you sort of like do it more like that, and you try to win people over and try to come to some common ground, right? That's the short answer. Is the load too much higher than expected? Are you saying that's what you took the job and it's much more work than you were expecting? Well, you can deal with that. Look, if you've taken a job and you've just reached the end of your trial period and it's been a lot more challenging than they led you to believe, okay, I suppose you could ask for more compensation, but usually the answer will be no. The only way to really deal with that is to come up with another option, okay? Because if your only options are doing this job on their terms or unemployment, those are your only two options, then you have, if you don't want to be unemployed, then you have to accept what the terms are and the job as is. If you go out and get yourself an alternative job offer from another place, then you have something to bargain with, okay? That's how that works. Lino, you're having some problems, I see. I'm sorry about that. Keep trying. That's all I can say. It's not showing up. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what the problem is. RPG Nerd 1991 says, "Hi, company's expert. How dare you not capitalize my name when you refer to me? I feel mortally insulted by that." I'm just kidding. I got to say something to spice this up. Hi, company's expert. I have a question. I'm currently facing the problem where my last job lasted 7 months, and that was done in February this year. My position before I was in for almost 5 years. Okay. Oh, it continues. Lately, every interview I have, when they ask me why you left, I say it was a cultural issue and my job role description changed. I feel whatever I say, I'm looked down upon and not sure what to do. One recruiter recently said it's weird because normally people leave when they have another job lined up, and also why I didn't find anything yet. See, there's that thing I was talking about earlier in the stream, where if you're out of work for a certain amount of time, they assume, you're unemployable. It's stupid. But this is what recruiters do. They sort of condense reality down to these little sort of rules that in most situations don't actually apply. And it's all for the purpose of finding the least risky candidate, the safest possible candidate. It's not the best candidate, just the safest candidate. That's what they're looking for. When you look at it through that lens, a lot of what they do then starts to make sense. Okay, they're not looking for the best candidate like they say they are. They're looking for the safest one. Okay, so RPG Nerd, to answer your question here, which was way up here. Was there a question here? I feel whatever I say. That's what the recruiter said. That's what you did. I have a question. I'm currently facing... Well, you have a question, but you didn't actually ask a question. You described your situation and you described what a recruiter said. So if you could phrase a question, that would be helpful. Anthony, if jobs are saying in the beginning salary is not negotiable, does that really mean if you get an offer, you can't try to increase it Anthony, you can do whatever you want, okay? You have the ability and nothing stopping you from coming back and saying, look, thank you for the offer. This is all great, but this number doesn't work for me. I need you to change it if you want me to accept, okay? So you have that ability to do it. Now, they also have the ability to reject anything they want. They could offer you a contract, an employment contract, and then rescind it. Like they have the right to do that too. Okay. So you can do what you want. They can do what you want. Now, usually the way this goes is that this is the short version. In the beginning, okay, they care about salary. They don't want a candidate that's going to ask for too much. Okay. But that's before they get to know the candidate. If you make it through that hurdle, okay, and they don't reject you out of hand at the beginning for wanting too much money, and you get to the point where they're actually like looking into your qualifications and your background and what you can bring to the job and how you are like to work as a person, especially if the hiring manager is involved in this process, okay, what can happen is that then you can wow them. They can fall in love with you. They can say, oh, I want that person. I want Anthony, right? Now, if they go through this process, especially if it's long, you've come in for several interviews, it's been dragging on for 2 or 3 months, whatever, and then at the end they give you an offer, and you say, well, sorry, this number doesn't work. I need this. And it's like, 5% more or something. A lot of times they can say, well, look, just pay the guy the money so then we can just finish this process, right? If a hiring manager is involved, that's usually how this goes, okay? So that's possible, and that does happen a lot. It is also possible that they meant what they said. This salary is non-negotiable, and they're standing by that. It isn't just a tactic, because it can be a tactic. They don't want you to ask for more money. They want you to be happy with what they're paying, right? And they want to pay you very little, right? So it can be a tactic to help achieve that, okay? They want you to believe that the salary is non-negotiable. But if they absolutely think you're awesome, they've gone through a lengthy, expensive, time-consuming process to find you, and then at the very end, when they think they've got it in the bag, you're basically sending them the signal that if you don't do this, you're going to be starting from the beginning of this process again, right? And a lot of times they'll be just, okay, fine, whatever. Just give them the money and then we can get on with this, right? Okay. Now, if you don't have anything to negotiate with, you'd be bluffing. Because the reality is, if your choices are, like I said, unemployment or this job, if you don't want to be unemployed, you have to take this job as they've dictated it, right? If, however, you're having interviews with other companies for other jobs that also look very promising, and maybe one of them gives you an offer, then you totally can do this, right? If it doesn't work for you, you can negotiate it. And if they don't like it, they have the right to refuse and say, it's just not working. You say, okay, great, see ya. That's how these things work, okay? It's not about persuasion. It's about having multiple options so you have negotiating power. That's what it's about. Oh, this jumped again. God. RPG nerd. Lately, every interview I have, when they ask why you left, I say it's a cultural issue. Okay, we did that. RPG nerd, did you follow? Yeah, here we go. Sorry, company's expert. How should I tackle this issue in my question? Sorry, I had to copy paste. Is there a limit on words? Tackle this issue. Okay, so the issue was why you left. Yeah, they're playing this stupid game again, where they like, oh, you don't have a job, so therefore that signals that you're unhireable. Right? I mean, honestly, I would do the thing I've said a couple of times already today, which is go take an online course, some free online course. And then if anyone asks, say, okay, I was laid off or whatever, but I decided to go back to school, brush up on my skills, took a few online courses, and now here I am. I've just started looking again. There you go. That's pretty harmless, right? And technically, it's not a lie because you have been off work and you did go back and take some schooling. So, you know what I mean? That's how I would do it if it were me. And if I understand your situation, hopefully that makes sense. You see, they're like, once again, they're looking for the safest candidate. And in their mind, which is based somewhat on reality, is that if you have work gaps in your past, especially a current work gap where you've been out of work for a long time, they take the attitude that, oh, that's a red flag. That signals that perhaps there's something wrong with this candidate that we don't know about. Okay? So we're not going to try and figure out what that is. We're just going to assume it as if it's true, because in this process, they're not taking the time to get to know people, right? They're just looking at a very superficial view of who you are, and they're making their decisions based on that. So what the approach should be is to sort of reassure them that this work gap is not an issue, okay? It's not like you've been trying to find work and couldn't find it. Instead, this is something where it was planned. Okay, you were laid off, no fault of yours. But instead of trying to immediately find new employment, you figured, you know what? I will take a little bit of time. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to develop a couple of skills. I have interest in certain areas. I'm going to take some education in those areas, and then I'm going to rejoin the workforce. And if you spin it like that, okay, first of all, take some courses so it's not an outright lie. And then if you spin it like that, they'll be, oh, okay, so there's no red flag here. This was all part of a plan. Makes sense, checks out. And you even have, the courses on your resume, or you can say what courses they were if we ask. So it all checks out. It's all legitimate. So there's no issues with you. Okay? It's stupid, but this is the game that they're playing. Okay? So hopefully that helps. Thank you for your Juan, my buddy Juan again. Don Juan Orozco says, thank you for your transparent and bottom line upfront bluff answer. Your advice is top notch. Well, thank you very much. It's top notch if it works out. And in this world, there are exceptions to everything, and it depends where you are. But thank you very much for saying that. I'm glad it's helpful. Lion, Bill, it would be great if you could make a video about how to write a letter of interest to contact senior managers. Well, I have that. It's not really a letter, it's a note, but I have that in my course. I've done all that stuff in my course. I think I've even mentioned in a couple of free videos, like how to approach people and stuff. Pros and cons of using staffing services such as Robert Half. I know Robert Half is like a big deal. They've grown quite a bit. I mean, look, if they're good for what they do, like if you want an accountant or a bookkeeper or somebody on short notice, you want someone for a very short term, and you don't want to interview 1,000 people and learn what's a good bookkeeper and what's not. Like, they'll just supply you with a bookkeeper. So whatever. That's good. I haven't had much experience with Robert Half by name, but I have dealt with staffing companies. It's okay. It serves a function if you need like work at short term. If you're a candidate, you're out of work, you need like work, you can put your name in and they'll interview you and stuff. And that can be a solution for some people, but I don't know. I think that I just believe that a lot of HR is, when it comes to recruitment and selection, I'm talking about, it's, I don't know. It's almost like they're trying to sell a product that most people can do themselves, It's a little bit like some basic construction. Like if you have a house, you could hire someone to build a deck for you or something. But building a deck is within the capabilities of most people. I mean, it's not your specialty. It takes a little bit of brains, a little bit of work, but you really need someone to do it for you. You could do it for half the price that someone else would charge. So, that was always my attitude when I was a manager. And I've said this before, I checked in with a lot of other managers, and that was kind of the consensus. Should you hire someone yourself, or should you give it to a HR, like a recruitment and selection company? And it was always like, well, it doesn't really matter. If you do it, it's a bit more work, but you get a good result and it's a lot cheaper. If you hire an HR company, like a staffing company, whatever, they'll do it and it's okay, but it's not a great experience dealing with them. You pay them they ask way more money than the value they provide. And it's not a particularly amazing result. So, that's my general attitude towards companies in that space. Okay. That's the person. Okay. Note this is a senior position. Okay. Like that was a long time ago. I was talking about your question. Here we go. Oh yeah. Okay. Drag to more. That was the one I didn't quite understand your question. So let's see. What have you got to say now? Note this is a senior position. Thank you again for the great content and live video. My question was missed earlier. It wasn't missed. I just didn't understand what you wrote. Sorry, okay. If you can rephrase your question in a format that I can sort of understand what the question is, I will be happy to answer it. Joe says, thanks for doing these Q&A sessions, Bill. You're perfectly welcome, Joe. Thank you for showing up for it. Lino Walker says, do you have any advice on conducting interviews? All I get online is how to ask bog standard recruiter questions. Yeah, because it's a farce. Look, for interviews, interviews are created to, like, how can I say this and not come across like a arrogant, entitled jerk? In HR and interviews are created to hire low-level people. That's what they are, like lower level. Worker level, certainly. Supervisor, maybe up to the manager, the first management level. But when you go higher than that, it's an entirely different process, okay? I mean, if somebody is trying to hire someone to be a divisional vice president, they're not going to hire a stranger, sit them down and say, so, what are your weaknesses? I mean, it's asinine. That's not how you do it at that level. At that level, you try and get to know the person, okay? You try and get to know what they stand for, what their work methods are, what their beliefs are when it comes to doing their job. Some people believe that you can make more money through high quality. Some people believe you can make more money through extreme organization. Other people believe that you can make more money by seizing every opportunity as fast as possible. Like, there's different approaches to virtually everything. And, for higher level stuff where it's very important you get the right person, they don't get the candidate to talk to recruiters and they're asked, like, so tell me about yourself. It's ridiculous. What they do is they actually try and get to know the person over several free-flowing conversations. They might take you out to dinner or to lunch or whatever and just have a free-flowing conversation. And you'd ask people questions like, this thing on your resume, that job, I knew you were in that job at the time, and I occasionally heard things about you. What was your biggest challenge? Why did you take that approach to do this? And someone would explain, well, I'd encountered this issue before. And it's a free-flowing conversation. You gradually get to know the person. And in that process, you also get, like, if it's multiple hours over multiple events, the guard gets left down and you get to see who that person is more of. Are they very moody? Do they have a very bad temper? Do they have like a sort of, a sore spot where you could like touch a nerve and they get really upset over, things like this. You get to learn what makes them tick. That's how that process usually is conducted. And it's not conducted by recruiters who have never been in a position of influence. It's conducted by the hiring managers, the other executives, or the owner, or the CEO, or the board members. That's how that stuff usually works. And that way you really get to see inside the person. And you're not just going on first impressions. You're going on who they are. I mean, it's a very time-consuming process, but you have to put the time in to get the right person. Okay, so it's a totally different process. So how do I do interviews? That's how I try and do them. Now, if it's a very, very low level position, what I would do is I go to the interview and I'm interviewing and I take the person's resume, I print it out and I put it on the table in front of me and I start with that. I say like, so I see you've done this, tell me about this, how did you get that job? How did it go? What did you think of your boss? Like, I see you have this accomplishment. Can you talk a bit about that? Like, what was that all about? And I don't ask these stupid cookie cutter questions. A lot of the answers to those will come out, at least I feel, in your conversations about their work history, right? So that's how I do it. But I mean, as far as I can tell, I'm in a minority here. I'm not a recruiter. And, I've taught recruiters. I've taught the theory behind this stuff. And it's only really applicable for like very, very low level jobs where everybody's fungible, where one person is as good as the next. Okay. I have another 10 minutes or so. We're getting towards the end of this, but I got a few questions here. So RGP Nerd says, sorry, company's expert. How should I tackle this? Much better. Thank you. I'm just kidding. How should I tackle this issue with my question? Sorry, I had to copy paste as there's a limit on words. Okay, now RPG Nerd. Now you were talking about, that was the work gap thing, right? Is that the work gap? Look, okay, if like that's a very general question. How do I deal with this issue? And you've described the story. First of all, this whole bit about like I feel whatever I say I'm looked down upon, that's pretty standard. Okay, a lot of people feel like that. It's not a very comfortable position. Usually, when we're looking for a job, we're between jobs. We're at our lowest point, right? One of our lowest points in our lives. We don't feel confident. We don't feel good about ourselves. We don't feel comfortable, right? And we feel that everyone's judging us. We're sort of hypersensitive to that, okay? So don't read into that too much. And also, I know a lot of recruiters and stuff, or hiring managers too, they go out of their way to not make a candidate comfortable. I know some technical managers that do that. They go into the job interview and they're unnecessarily severe. They're not warm and welcoming. They're very like, okay, what makes you... I have a video where I talked about something that happened to me many years ago where some vice president or something, some engineer type, I don't like engineer types. I can say that I am an engineer, or I have an engineering degree. But when it comes to being warm and fuzzy, they're usually not the best people for that. But they went out of their way to like, what makes you think that you can work here? What makes you think that you're even qualified to even, be considered for this job? Like, this is when you're in the interview, they've invited you in for it, right? They really go out of their way to make you sweat and make you squirm. And I think it's stupid. I think it's, it's like you're getting some insight into like who that person is. It's not necessarily the person you want to work for. But first off, they asked you why you left your last job and you said it was a cultural issue. Now that's, in my opinion, that's not a great answer. Okay, you're raising a red flag. Okay, this is an issue. If it's a cultural issue for that job, what's to stop it to be a cultural issue for this job where you just didn't work out, right? It's not really an answer that's going to inspire a lot of confidence. It's going to raise a bunch of questions and it's going to raise a red flag. Okay, so don't say that, okay? I have a video that's coming out tomorrow, actually, about that precise question. When they ask you why you left, you don't say anything negative. Okay? The best thing to say is just, I was ready to do more. Why did you leave your last job? Was it not working out? Say, no, it was working great. What did you think of your last boss? What was the thing that you hated the most about them? Nothing really. I mean, we were friends. Everything was working out. It was just, it was just time to do more. And then you start talking about how you want to do things that relate more to this job that you're interviewing with. Talk about what you have. I have these skills. I have those skills. I have this experience. I have those traits. Coincidentally, these are all the things that they're looking for this job. And you say, I wanted to apply all of that, to one role. And that's what brings me here. There, you haven't said anything negative, and you've also used it as a platform to, once again, put forward that, like, A, you're passionate about this, and B, you have everything that they're looking for, right? So think about stuff more like that. Okay, in my opinion, do some practice on getting answers to the individual questions, having good answers to any potential red flag they're going to ask you, and then do mock interviews with friends or family where you practice saying this stuff when people are staring at you and you're a little bit nervous. And hopefully that'll help. I don't care what a recruiter said. You said a recruiter said it's weird because whatever. Yeah, it's like, who cares what they say? Like I said, they're looking for the lowest risk candidate. And unfortunately, it sounds like, from what little you told me, that their response to your raising that cultural issues red flag is that they've decided you're a higher risk because of that, so it didn't work out. So hopefully that makes sense, okay? You're doing okay, but you just need to tweak some answers, certainly that one, and hopefully it shouldn't be a problem going forward. Lino says, yes. Anybody remember Napoleon Dynamite? I wish I could do the yes, thing that he did. I'm probably too fat to do that. Yes, my question went through. I just wanted to say how awesome your videos are and what a breath of fresh air they've been. I just wish I could have stumbled upon them sooner. Well, thank you very much, Lino. That's very, very kind of you, and I appreciate it. Every one of you guys that said something nice to me this entire live stream, you've brightened my day. Thank you very much. You guys are awesome. You're absolutely welcome, RPG nerd. Anthony says, I do have an offer for a freight sales job, and I might have an offer for healthcare recruiting job. That's a nice mix. Do you have any insight on what might be a better long-term job? Look, I don't have a crystal ball on that stuff. If it were me and I had to guess, and this is just a guess, I would say healthcare recruiting. Okay? If you're talking about what's going to be a more stable job over the long term, I would say that. But I don't know, really. It's just a gut feeling from what little I know of the larger economy. I was unfortunately laid off in the mortgage side, so I just wanted to see what's the best option. Yeah, that's what I would say. I mean, they're both not bad. They're both legitimate, and they both are not like going away anytime soon. Okay. But I think that there's going to be more turbulence in the supply chain side. I mean, we've just come off like probably the biggest event that has disrupted global supply chains since globalization began. At least to my knowledge, it has. And we're still in the wake of that. And on top of that, there's a lot of new technology that's coming in, that's sort of trickling its way in, that is going to be definitely disruptive, certainly to that industry. And not to mention the like gas prices and fuel prices and things like that. The larger economic things are going on right now that are affecting it directly too at the moment, independent of the big tumultuous event we've just had in the last couple of years. So for all those reasons, it makes me feel that there's a bit of turbulence in the supply chain side. So I'm just going for the healthcare option because of that. That's my reasoning. And I'm far from an expert when it comes to predicting the global economy. So take that with a grain of salt. You're absolutely welcome, Lino. That's very nice of you to say. Okay, I have to wrap this up in a couple of minutes, but I'll just do these five questions that I've got here. Raminder says, "Hi, thank you for doing this. I too have a question on senior management roles. What's the successful mindset for higher level jobs? How to prepare and stand out? What do they look for?" Oh, I mean, listen. You get all kinds. When you ask what they look for, I don't know how to answer that. Everybody looks for the stupidest things. What's actually important is, in my opinion, two things. Number one, a knowledge of business. Okay, because when you get to the higher level, you're dealing with business. That's what you're doing. Even if you were a technical manager before you worked your way up, now you're in the world of business. You're having to worry about money. And, a track record is the other thing, a track record of success. Okay? I mean, that's what actually matters. Okay? Now, if you're trying to impress a person who has never been in business for themselves and they don't really know what's important, then it could be something as ridiculous as how good you look, right? That has been known. People will promote somebody because they just look fantastic and they sound fantastic. I mean, they might not have any brains, but they get the job. And things have a way of balancing themselves out later on in the long term. But what I would do is, if you're in a specific industry, in a specific place, okay, here's what you can do, okay? If you have a very specific job in mind that you're wanting, okay, you want to be in that role, okay, what you can do is you can go on LinkedIn, okay, and if you're already there, great, okay, but you might have to jump through a couple of hoops, but basically do a people search for all the people, all the individuals in your industry, in your location that are in that role, okay? And then what you can do is you can essentially look at their profile. You can look at their resume. And you can see what they have. So if they all have a certain degree and you don't, maybe that's the thing to get. If they all have certain experience in a certain area, maybe they all came up through sales or something, then all indications are that you probably need that too, right? So that's a sort of general approach that I would use if you have a specific role in mind in a specific industry, in a specific location. I would do that, okay? And then, you could find anything, but you're looking for patterns, okay? Now, it's not going to tell you everything. It's not going to tell you their personality type. It's not going to tell you maybe their social connections that might have been going on behind the scene. It's not going to tell you that stuff, but it will tell you certainly their work experience, their education, and a few other things like that. Okay. Okay, we're getting to the end of this. 3 more questions. Antonio Lopez says, "Is there one thing I can say in an interview for a recruiting position that most candidates wouldn't think about saying or asking? I want to switch careers and become a great recruiter." Well, okay, you're probably talking to the wrong guy here, because, I've hired people, I've fired people, and I've taught recruiters in university. But ironically, I've never worked as a recruiter. That's never been my job title. And anyone who watches my channel, you can tell that I have a little chip on my shoulder for recruiters in general. There's some great ones. I'm not knocking them as a group, but within that group, there's a hell of a lot of people that don't have a clue what they're doing, and they're actually doing a terrible job, but yet they don't realize it. So I'm probably the wrong guy to talk to. What would be better would be to talk to a recruiter and say, in your opinion, what makes a great recruiter and all this? Because it doesn't matter what I value. It matters what the sort of head recruiter or the vice president of HR, whoever is the decision maker on that, it matters what they think. Okay. So, my gut feeling, if you need an actual answer, my gut feeling is not to say something totally off the wall that, you want to stand out by doing something or saying something that they've never heard before. I wouldn't actually take that approach. Usually that is not the recipe for success. What they're looking for is they're looking for somebody that has the requirements, and they're looking for the soft skills. Soft skills are instantly likable, very easy to deal with, and passionate about doing this type of work. Okay, that's that in a nutshell. That's basically what they're looking for. So if you can show that more than any other candidate, then they would pick you. That's usually how these things go. Okay, but talk to a recruiter. Say what specific things, in your opinion, makes for a great recruiter. Who would you hire as a recruiter, under you, if you had to hire a recruiter? What things would really impress you, and what things would you need to see? I would look for that. Hopefully that makes sense. There's some more questions than I have a chance to do here. I'm already over my time limit. Okay, very quickly. Juan says, I hate these behavior questions so much from cold interviewers. How do you even quantify it? I guess if I'm not sweating and talking about picking myself up from bootstraps, I don't have a shot. A lot of those are artificial. Go watch some videos about behavioral-based questions. I've done a few of them. There's definitely a formula for how to prepare for those. Lion, do you think doing some work as a freelancer on platforms such as Fiverr or Upwork can affect you negatively if a hiring company finds out about it? I've never heard of that, but then again, that doesn't mean much. Listen, if it's work, it's work. Okay, if it's working for you, great. If you think it's going to be a liability, then experiment. Apply for jobs where you omit that from your resume and see if you get any results. If that doesn't work, put it on and see if you get different results. That's the only way to really know for sure. Ahmed, hello from Pakistan. I'd like to ask, is it okay to follow up after a job interview if you haven't heard from them in almost a week or two? Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Why not? Why would you not? Yes. Raminder, thank you very much. My pleasure. Okay. And Ahmed's question, I'm going to answer Ben, I'm going to answer Ahmed, and that's the end of the live stream for me. Unfortunately, Ben, I performed an interview for a company. A few days later, I sent an email. The company is still doing interviews for a few more weeks. I still haven't heard back from them. Is it correct to assume they will send a response after they've conducted all their interviews? Listen, Ben, they've already given you a response. The response is no. Until you hear a yes from them, it's a no. Keep moving forward, okay? Don't stop and then wait by the phone, okay? Focus on creating more job opportunities for yourself. Go out and get more interviews with other companies, okay? If they select you, they will call you. And finally, last question, Ahmed says, I followed up with them. They are interested in hiring, but their management isn't really getting any time to hold the finalization interview. Okay. Well, if they're too cool to talk to a recruiter, talk to candidates, then they won't hire anybody, will they? Listen, it's always a no until they say yes, okay? Until they contact you and say, we'd like to bring you in for another interview. Just assume it's a no and keep moving, okay? Don't be hand-wringing over not having heard anything. These people are absolutely notorious for terrible communication, okay? That's one of the reasons that I have the attitude that I do when it comes to recruiters, okay? They don't interact professionally with people. This is well known. There are some great ones, but a lot of them, they don't know how to deliver bad news. They don't know how to communicate properly. And anyone who ghosts other people as routine, I don't have a lot of respect for. And neither should you. You don't have to be treated this way. It's an unprofessional way to treat people. So if that's how they're going to behave with you, you look out for yourself. You go out and you focus on the next big job opportunity and get an interview for it and get an offer for it. That should be your focus. Okay? So that's unfortunately all the time I have for. I'm actually over my time limit. Thank you guys for being here. You're all awesome. I see there's still 34 people here. Thank you for the really intelligent questions. I really enjoyed interacting with a lot of you guys today. I'm here every Wednesday, 9 a.m. Central Time in North America. And if you're interested, join me on Friday for my other live stream where we explore making money, but beyond simply being an employee. Okay. That's very early in the morning on Saturday. That's at 2 a.m. Central Time in North America. Join me for that. You have to be a member to ask questions, but everybody can see the stream, okay, for that one, because it works slightly different. If you are at an impasse and you're having real trouble getting a job and you're trying to get a job, I have this thing here, my Get Hired course. There's a link in the description. Check it out. I even have a video where I talk all about how the course works and answer all kinds of questions about it. Check that out. Thank you very much. You guys are awesome. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.